wind cut through the bare branches of the Fox Chase Woods in Philadelphia, carrying with it the damp, bone-chilling cold of late February. It was an area caught between the encroaching city and the wild, overgrown quiet of the countryside, a place where illegal trash dumping was common and secrets were easily buried under layers of decaying leaves and scrub brush. It was here, in this desolate patch of land off Susquehanna Road, that a discovery was made which would shatter the hearts of a nation and launch the longest, most frustrating homicide investigation in the history of the Philadelphia Police Department. For 65 years, he was known only as the boy in the box, America's unknown child. His face, frozen in a state of eternal slumber on thousands of missing person flyers, became a haunting icon of lost innocence. Welcome to DCF Investigations. Today, we are going to walk back into the cold mist of 1957, trace the agonizing steps of 1,000 failed leads, examine the darkest corners of human cruelty, and finally, uncover the name that was stolen from a little boy for more than half a century. To understand the gravity of this case, we must first immerse ourselves in the atmosphere of Philadelphia in 1957. It was a time of post-war prosperity, a seemingly innocent era of doo-wop music, tail-finned cars, and tight-knit neighborhoods where everyone knew everyone's business. But beneath the veneer of the American dream, there existed a shadowy undercurrent of poverty, displacement, and social invisibility. The Fox Chase section of the city was a semi-rural borderland, a place where the street lights ended and the darkness began. It was in this darkness that the story begins, not with the police, but with a young man named Frederick Benonis. On the afternoon of February 25th, 1957, Benonis was driving along Susquehanna Road. He was young, only 26, and he had spotted a rabbit running into the underbrush. Hoping to catch the animal, he stopped his car and ventured into the thicket. There, amidst the brambles and the trash, he saw a large cardboard box. It was a box that had once contained a bassinet from J.C. Penney. Benonis peered inside, expecting perhaps to find a doll or maybe the carcass of an animal. What he saw stopped his heart. It was the naked, battered body of a young boy. But Benonis did not run to the police. Not immediately. In a detail that speaks volumes about the relationship between citizens and authority at the time. Benonis was terrified that his presence in the area would alert the police to his own illicit activities, as he had been spying on the young women at the nearby Good Shepherd School. Fear paralyzed his conscience. He left the boy in the cold and drove away, keeping the horrific secret to himself. It wasn't until the next day, after hearing reports of a missing girl in the area, that Benonis finally made the call. He hoped the body he found was unrelated, but the weight of what he had seen was too much to bear. When the Philadelphia police arrived at the scene on February 26th, the damp gray sky seemed to mourn with them. The officers, hardened men who had seen the worst of the city, were visibly shaken. The scene was frozen in time. The box, measuring roughly 14 by 19 by 35 inches, lay on its side. Inside, wrapped in a cheap plaid Indian blanket, lay the boy. He appeared to be between 4 and 6 years old. He was small for his age, severely malnourished, his ribs visible beneath pale, bruised skin. His hair had been crudely cut, clumps of it still clinging to his shoulders and the blanket, as if someone had hurriedly tried to disguise his appearance just moments before or after death. His body was clean and dry. his hands and feet wrinkled as if he had been submerged in water for a long period shortly before he died. This detail, the washerwoman's skin, would become a critical, agonizing clue that pointed to a domestic setting, a bathtub, a final act of cleaning away the evidence of a life. The autopsy, conducted by Dr. Joseph Spellman, painted a picture of chronic abuse and neglect. The boy had not died from exposure to the cold. He had been beaten to death. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, likely from a series of blows. But the horror went deeper. The boy had 7 distinct scars on his body, 3 of which were surgical scars on his chest, groin, and ankle. These were cut-down incisions, procedures used to insert intravenous lines, suggesting the child had received significant medical care at some point in his life. He also had a scar on his chin. His eyes, blue and staring into nothingness, offered no answers. His stomach was empty, save for a dark, unrecognizable substance that suggested he had vomited shortly before dying. The investigation that followed was a massive mobilization of manpower and emotion. The Philadelphia Police Department, led by detectives who took the case personally, canvassed the entire region. They sent out hundreds of thousands of flyers to every household in Philadelphia. They placed a photograph of the boy's face, retouched to make him look as though he were merely sleeping, in every gas bill sent out in the city. They wanted every mother, every father, every neighbor to look at that face. Surely someone was missing a child. Surely a boy does not simply vanish from the earth without a single person noticing. But the silence that answered them was deafening. Detectives meticulously traced every piece of physical evidence found at the scene. The box itself became a focal point. It was a specific type of shipping carton for a white wicker bassinet sold by J.C. Penney. Investigators tracked the inventory. Only 12 of these specific bassinets had been sold in the Upper Darby area. They tracked down 8 of the buyers, verifying their stories and clearing them. But the trail went cold on the remaining purchases, lost to cash transactions and false names. Then there was the hat. A royal blue corduroy cap was found nearby, tangled in the brush. It was a distinctive piece of clothing, and detectives traced it to a local manufacturer. The owner of the shop recalled the specific man who bought it, describing him as a blond man in his 20s who wore a similar style of clothing. But despite sketches and pleas to the public, the man in the cap was never found, and it was never definitively proven that the hat belonged to the boy or his killer. It may have been just another piece of trash in a dumping ground, a red herring that consumed precious months of investigative time. As the weeks turned into months and the months into years, the case of the boy in the box began to settle into the cold storage of unsolved mysteries. But it never left the minds of the investigators. One man in particular, Remington Bristow, an employee of the medical examiner's office, made it his life's mission to find the boy's identity. Bristow spent thousands of dollars of his own money and countless hours of his personal time chasing leads. He turned his attention to a foster home located roughly 1.5 miles from the crime scene. The foster home theory remains one of the most compelling and controversial chapters in this saga. Bristow believed that the boy was the son of the stepdaughter of the man who ran the foster home. He theorized that the pregnancy had been kept secret, the child raised in isolation, and his death the result of an accident or abuse that had to be covered up to protect the family's reputation and business. Bristow went so far as to have a psychic visit the site. He found a bassinet similar to the one from the box in the Foster home's attic. He saw blankets hanging on their clothesline that resembled the one wrapped around the boy. He was convinced he had solved it. But the police, lacking hard evidence, could never secure a warrant or a confession. Years later, DNA testing would clear the stepdaughter of being the mother, a crushing blow to a theory that had seemed so plausible for so long. Another chilling lead came decades later, known as the M theory. In 2002, a woman identified only as M came forward with a story that made the blood of seasoned detectives run cold. She claimed that her abusive mother had purchased the boy in 1954. She described a life of torture for the child, whom she said was named Jonathan. She claimed he was kept in the basement, physically and sexually abused, and forced to live in squalor. M recounted the day the boy died. She said he had vomited his dinner of baked beans after a severe beating, and her mother had thrown him into the bathtub in a rage, slamming his head against the floor until he stopped moving. The details M provided were startlingly accurate. The autopsy had indeed found a substance in the boy's stomach that could have been baked beans. The water-wrinkled skin matched the bathtub story. M even described the boy's long hair, which she said her mother cut immediately after killing him to disguise his identity, matching the clumps of hair found at the scene. It seemed like the breakthrough everyone had waited for. However, after extensive interviews, the police eventually dismissed the story. M had a history of psychiatric instability, and neighbors who lived near her childhood home denied ever seeing a young boy living there. The timeline didn't quite fit, and without physical evidence, the M theory was categorized as a tragic fabrication of a troubled mind. Though some investigators remain haunted by the specificity of her claims. Throughout the decades, the boy remained alone. He was buried in a potter's field in 1957 with a simple headstone that read, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." But the city would not let him be forgotten. In 1998, his body was exhumed to extract DNA, a new technology that offered a glimmer of hope. The initial results were disappointing. The techniques of the time could only extract mitochondrial DNA, which links to the maternal line, but is not unique enough to identify a specific individual without a known suspect. He was reburied, this time in Ivy Hill Cemetery, with a new headstone donated by the son of the man who buried him in 1957. The service was attended by weeping strangers, police officers who had grayed on the job, and a community that had adopted this child as their own. Years passed. The world changed. We entered the digital age. The internet gave rise to amateur sleuths, and the case of the boy in the box became a global obsession. Web sleuths pored over the details, proposing theories involving Hungarian refugees, carnival workers, and kidnapping victims like Stephen Damon. Every theory was checked. Every theory crumbled. But science was advancing at a breakneck pace. The field of genetic genealogy, which had successfully identified the Golden State Killer, was about to shine a light into the darkness of 1957. In 2019, the boy was exhumed for a second time. This was a gamble. The body had been underground for over 60 years. The DNA was degraded, broken down by time and the elements. But the team at the Vidocq Society, a group of forensic professionals who meet to solve cold cases, along with the Philadelphia police, were determined. They sent the samples to multiple labs. For months, it seemed like another dead end. The DNA quantity was insufficient. But then, a breakthrough. A specialized lab was able to construct a viable profile. This data was uploaded to genealogical databases, the same ones people use to find their distant cousins. The genealogist, Misty Gillis, began the tedious, complex work of building family trees. She looked for common ancestors, tracing lines back to the 19th century, and then bringing them forward to the 1950s. She found a match on the maternal side. Then, crucially, a match on the paternal side. The intersecting lines pointed to a specific set of parents. But knowing who the parents were was not enough. They had to prove the boy was theirs. Detectives located living relatives. They quietly, discreetly collected DNA samples to confirm the lineage. They scoured birth records from 1953. And there, hidden in the archives, was a birth certificate for a male child born on January 13, 1953. On December 8, 2022, the Philadelphia Police Commissioner stood before a podium. The room packed with reporters and the ghosts of detectives passed. The atmosphere was electric, heavy with the weight of 65 years of silence. He announced that the boy in the box had a name. His name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Joseph. He was not a piece of evidence. He was not a John Doe. He was Joseph. He was born in West Philadelphia. He had lived. He had walked the earth for 4 short years. The revelation of his identity unlocked the tragic narrative of his life. Though many details remain guarded to protect the innocent living relatives who had no idea of his existence. We learned that Joseph was born to a couple who were not married. His father, Augustus J. Zarelli, has passed away, as has his biological mother. The investigation revealed that Joseph lived with a family in West Philadelphia. He was not a transient. He was not kidnapped from a carnival. He was a child living in the heart of the city, invisible to the systems meant to protect him. The police have been careful with the information released regarding the specific circumstances of his custody. It appears his biological father may not have known of his existence or his death until much later, or perhaps never. The focus of the homicide investigation has now shifted to the adults who had custody of Joseph in the weeks leading up to February 1957. We know that he was malnourished. We know he was beaten. We know that someone, likely someone he trusted or feared, took his life and discarded him like refuse in the frozen woods. The identification of Joseph Augustus Zarelli is a triumph of science and persistence. But it is not the end of the story. It is merely the beginning of the final chapter. The case remains an active homicide investigation. While the prime suspects, his custodial guardians, are likely deceased given the passage of time, the police are still seeking to piece together the exact timeline of his final days. They want to know who held the weapon. They want to know who drove the car to Fox Chase. They want to know who cut his hair in that frantic, jagged style. There's a profound sadness in knowing the name. It transforms the boy in the box from a symbol into a person. We can now picture him not just as a body in a box, but as a 4-year-old boy who likely loved toys, who perhaps looked out the window at the passing cars, who felt pain and fear. The scars on his body tell us that his short life was one of medical trauma and physical suffering. The wash on his skin tells us of a final, perhaps remorseful, perhaps pragmatic attempt to clean him before disposal. The community of Philadelphia, and indeed the world, has reacted with a complex mix of relief and renewed grief. The headstone at Ivy Hill Cemetery was updated. It now bears his full name and his birth date. Visitors leave toy cars, flowers, and notes addressing him as Joseph. He has regained his dignity. But questions linger. Why did no neighbors report him missing? How did a child with such severe medical history vanish from the medical system? The silence of 1957. Philadelphia was a heavy blanket, woven from a culture that did not interfere in family matters, a culture that looked away. As we analyze the legacy of this case, we see how it changed policing. It pioneered the use of mass media in missing persons cases. It highlighted the need for better communication between jurisdictions. And ultimately, it proved the immense power of forensic genealogy, a tool that is now solving cold cases once thought to be impossible. The story of Joseph Augustus Zarelli is a stark reminder of our collective responsibility to the vulnerable. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about how we protect the children in our own communities today. It reminds us that justice has no expiration date. Even if the perpetrators have escaped an earthly courtroom. As the sun sets over the Fox Chase woods today, the area is different. The trees have grown taller. The city has encroached further. But the spot where the box was found remains a place of quiet remembrance. The wind still blows through the branches, but it no longer carries the secret of an unknown child. It whispers the name Joseph. This has been a deep dive into one of America's most haunting mysteries here on DCF Investigations. We have walked through the evidence, the theories, and the breakthrough that brought Joseph home. But the file is not closed. There are still missing pieces to this puzzle. Someone out there might still hold a fragment of the truth, a family story passed down in whispers, a memory of a neighbor in West Philadelphia in 1957. If you have any information, no matter how small, about the Zarelli family or the circumstances surrounding Joseph's life in 1957, please contact the Philadelphia Police Department. I want to leave you with a question to ponder in the comments below. Science gave Joseph his name back, but the legal system may never be able to prosecute his killer due to the passage of time. In cases like this, where the perpetrators are likely dead, what does true justice look like? Is the truth enough? Or is there a debt that can never be repaid? Thank you for joining me on this journey into the dark. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth. This is DCF Investigations, signing off.